Hey there, Tina Forsyth here. Welcome to video number 9 in the top 10 video series, the top 10 question asked in regard to finding, hiring, and working with a virtual team. Today's question is something I think a lot of us can relate to, a lot of us entrepreneurs can relate to, and that is this idea of like, help, I'm a control freak, how do I let go? What do I do? Entrepreneurs in general, most of the people I know, myself included, who have started our own businesses, right? Our businesses are our babies. We've started them from scratch. We're the ones who love them most. We're the ones who spend the most time with them, and in some cases we've been the ones doing a lot of the work, if not all of the work within our business, right? And if you're getting to the stage in your business and you're, or you're getting really, quite honestly tired of doing all the work on your own, you may be at the point where you want to bring more team members in. You want to be able to let go more. You want to be able to, be able to pass things on to your team and know that they're going to be taken care of. And yet I know if you're like me at all and you have kind of these control freak tendencies, that can be a tough journey for us. It can be a tough journey for a lot of business owners. And it's something that, it's something I know intimately myself, and it's something that I know a lot of business owners struggle with. And I also know that a lot of virtual support professionals struggle with this. If they're working for a client who's got these control freak tendencies and doesn't want to let go of things or is hanging over their shoulder at every stage, it can be highly frustrating all around. It really, really can. And there's a couple of tips. We're going to really get into this in depth in the Thrive hiring system, right? We actually have kind of like a whole module, if you will, on this idea of how to be able to let go of things, how to delegate things, how to work with team members. If you have kind of control freak tendencies, what you can do to work within that, because it really is that important, in my opinion, in the grand scope of how we work with our team, how we build our team, and also, quite honestly, in the grand scope of our own sanity, creating a business that's not going to drive us nutty. To get, I don't want you to be in this place of feeling like, I want to be able to give things to people, but at the same time I can't, and back and forth, and it just turns into a real ick thing all around for everyone concerned. A couple of strategies I like to use. First and foremost, we talked in a past video about what are the things that you as a business owner should keep on your plate versus what should you delegate? What could you delegate to team members, right? And part of your journey throughout the day, especially if you kind of have control freak tendencies, right? Part of the journey throughout the day is to get into the habit of asking yourself, do I need to be the one to do this every day? Do I need to be the one who's taking care of X, whatever X is? I know for myself, especially because I actually know how to do everything in my business. I've been an online business manager for clients for years. The actual knowledge of how to do things, and quite honestly, the enjoyment of how to do things. It's like that's part of who I am. So I have to be extra careful with myself when I'm going throughout my day. Just as an example, creating these videos, right? Obviously I need to be the person recording the video and smiling and talking to you here on the screen. But outside of that, I've been the one doing a quick edit on the videos. I'm uploading them to YouTube, throwing up my blog posts, and then my team takes it over from there. And I was thinking the other day, it's like, wait a minute, my team could probably be doing a heck of a lot more of this, for me, right? I mean, that's just the fact of the matter is I didn't ask them. And I kind of hadn't really thought of it. I wasn't really asking, being diligent and asking myself that question, do I need to be the one to be doing this stuff? Really good habit to get yourself into that, right? And alongside that too, another great strategy that I like to use, and something I actually really recommend in regards to working with your team, is to ask people on your team to give you a little slap on the wrist when they see something that you could be giving to them for them to do. This is an excellent strategy all around. It's something we actually, really proactively train our OBMs to do on behalf of their clients, right? If you have a team, if you have the right team in place and you're able to create a space for them to be able to say to you, hey, you could give me that to do. Let me take that off your plate. Let me handle that for you. That can be part of the process of you starting to let go, because sometimes as business owners, we don't even realize what we can give to our team members, right? An example of this, my OBM, Tiffany, we opened up our OBM training and certification in June for an early bird registration. We were planning on doing this all along. We went ahead and opened it up in June. And part of the process for people to join that training is they submit an application. We have a conversation with them just to make sure it's a fit, and then we'll enroll them in the training. Historically, I've always been the one to do those calls. And I love doing those calls. I love talking to aspiring OBMs. I've always been the one to do this. And in the past few months, just in light of a lot of business things that we're working on and being really busy all around, quite honestly, Tiffany and I were having a conversation, and she said to me, she's like, well, why don't you let me do those calls? And I had a moment, if you will. It was kind of like, what? No, I like to do them. These are my calls. You know, it's my program. I want to talk to these people. You know, I had all this stuff kind of swirling through my head, if you will. And yet, you know, we kind of took a moment and stepped back. And it's like knowing Tiffany, she loves talking to people. She knows the OBM training in and out. She has a really good sense of when somebody's ready for it or not. You know, it was kind of like, well, hey, you know, why not? Let's give it a go. You know, but I'll be honest with you guys, it was tough at first. When I was first thinking of that, it's like, that was really one of those moments where it's like, but I don't want to let it go. You know, but then on the other hand, I'm like, okay, if I want to keep my sanity with everything that's going on, you know, it's probably a really good idea for me to let her do this. And, you know, the thing is that Tiffany loved these calls. She was having great conversations with people, made great connections. You know, we have a great group of people enrolled in our OBM training program. They've joined us for the summer school that we just started. You know, really all around, it worked out wonderfully. And I have to tell you guys, this has kind of been, for me as a business owner, for me as someone, you know, in the growth of my business, this has really been a moment, because it's truly one of those moments where I probably for the first time ever in my business that I really got what it is to, you know, let go and have someone handle something really important for me. Not to say that other things in my business haven't been important, right? But the fact of the matter is, you know, in the scope of my business being about training OBMs, you know, it's a lot of what I do, a lot of the focus of my business, having someone else take that over and talk to people and all of that. It was a really powerful moment for me, because I did have to let go as a business owner. I really did. And it was tough. It was tough, I'll admit it, you know, but at the same token, looking back on it, you know, woohoo, I wouldn't have it any other way. And this means moving forward, you know, like we have a great system in place, we have a great team, you know, I have Tiffany in place along with myself to have these conversations with people. It's really been working out wonderfully. Another kind of quick tip for you as well that I like when it comes to, for those of us as control freaks too, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that we just need to see what's going on in our business, even if we don't need to be intimately involved in all the nitty-gritty details. I'm a really big fan of setting up an environment of over-communication in my business. This is something that most business owners together with their teams do not do enough of. It's actually one of the bigger issues in communication, you know, and there's other ones too that come up, which we'll talk about in the Thrive hiring system, right? But one of the biggest issues when it comes to communication is that people simply do not do enough of it. They really don't. And I'm a huge fan of over communication. I want to know, I want to be CC'd or BCC'd on emails. I want to know what's going on. You know, we also have structures in place for project management, so I can check in what's going on there and all of that. But you know, the thing is, as a control freak, there's a difference between, well, I mean, control freak or business owner, it doesn't matter whether you have that tendency or not. You know, you need to have the finger on the pulse of your business. If you are not aware of what's going on in your business, that can actually really lend to some of the panic moments, the eek moments, the what's going on moments that all of us will have as business owners, right? I mean, I actually had one of these moments the other night. Unfortunately, my daughter, my 4-year-old, she had some nightmares, right? So I was up with her in the middle of the night for a little bit, and then when I went back to bed, I couldn't get to sleep. And I started having that, you know, whirly brain, where all these things are going on in my head. Did we get that? Did we get that done? Have we done this? Have we done that? You know, I had one of those moments going on. And the fact that, you know, I know we all have these moments. We all have these moments as entrepreneurs. But the flip side of this is that if you have a policy, if you have a structure in place for over communicating in your business, if you know what your team members are working on, if you know what they've completed, if you know what they're, you know, where they're at and what they're doing, you know, if you have it, not to say, again, it's not that you have to be intimately nitty-gritty involved in every detail, right? Because then that is, you know, kind of being the control freak, if you will. But to have your finger on the pulse of it, to be able to kind of see at a glance where things are at, I think is actually really important as a business owner. I know for me, especially being that recovering control freak type person, this has actually been essential for me, right? I need to be able to know where things are at. And, you know, yet the flip side of this is too, is that most people, most business owners and their teams do not do enough of this. They really don't. You know, I've talked to team members who are saying, you know, oh, well, I just don't want to bug the people I work for. I just don't want to bug them with this. You know, but the flip side of this is that we need to be plugged in. You know, we're going to talk about this more in the Thrive hiring system, because there is kind of a balance to it, right? We don't want to go overboard, but at the same time, we don't want to be totally unplugged. So we're going to be talking about that some more there, but really good strategy just to kind of keep your own sanity, if you will, within all of this. So video number 10, we're going to be talking about our final video, you know, just as ultimately almost like a recap in a sense with everything we've talked about already. What are some kind of touchstones that you can use to make sure that you're not settling? Because I don't want you to be settling on behalf of you and your business, on behalf of the people working for you. You know, it's just not fun.